The first month of the 2022 regular season has come to an end, and before we move on to May, we must go over April. So first things first, our Kansas City Royals are sitting at 17-10 on the season so far, which is actually second in the AL Central, one game behind the Minnesota Twins, who are sitting at top the AL Central, and then the Cleveland Indians and the Chicago White Sox are both 3.5 games back, so the AL Central could possibly be a pretty competitive division this year, which is definitely something I'd like to see, because as we're all aware, the first few seasons of this franchise have been pretty much just an absolute shit show of a division, with nobody really taking hold of it, and then just being like either me or whoever wins it having like 86 wins and winning the division. And now let's actually take a look at what happened in the month of April. Domingo Santana, our new acquisition out in right field, he is currently third in RBI, a stat that I do not like personally, but he is up there in the top 5, so I figured I'd show it nonetheless. He is top 10 in OPS with a 932 OPS, which is a stat that I do like, and he actually leads Kansas City in OPS as well. Jorge Bonifacio, gotten off to a bit of a slow start, 730 OPS, 2 home runs. Not worried about him at all, just a slow start, small sample size, only 1 month of the season. He is legitimately our best player, as you see his ratings on the screen right now. The guy is an absolute stud, he's a dude, he does his thing. I'm sure he'll be fine the rest of the year. It's just a slow start to the year. Chris Taylor, a guy who has not gotten off to a slow start. He's our utility guy. We brought him in the offseason for a 2-year deal after he spent the last 2 years with Detroit in the AL Central, and he's gotten off to a very hot start as our utility guy. 915 OPS, 40 at-bats. Very good for Chris Taylor. Miguel Andujar, pretty small sample size of 19 at-bats, and by pretty small, I mean very small of 19 at-bats, but he does have an 876 OPS, so give him credit in those 19 at-bats. Basically, his role on the team this year is he's a bench guy. He's going to be pinch hitting, and he's going to be getting a lot of time at first base, since Taylor cannot play first base, and he's like our backup infielder. So Andujar will be getting a decent amount of time at first, and then also third, but Taylor will mainly be getting the time at third when we need a backup third baseman. Cody Escalona has pretty much been everything I've hoped he'd be. 833 OPS, 3 home runs to start the year. I don't want to say he solved our shortstop issue because we're only a month in the season, but it's looking like he could be the solution to our shortstop issue. Logan Ice is now taken over as the starter against righties and lefties. At the catcher position, he has an 819 OPS and 43 ABs. He's been only playing against lefties, but now he's going to be playing against both because Mabrys Valoria is absolute dog shit. 507 OPS in 46 at-bats against right-handed pitching this year, just not good at all. And on this team, especially on my team, if you want to play, if you want to keep your job, you have to hit at some point. I've given him 2 seasons now, 2 full seasons of just doing nothing at the plate, and he has not hit. So, me personally, I would take a little bit less defensively for much more hitting than I would just have a guy who's having a 507 OPS in my lineup every day. So that's just not what I'm looking for. And Mabrys Valoria, he might even find himself down in AAA at some point, because I think I'm going to be trading for a catcher in this season at some point, and Logan Ice will probably be like a backup. And you may be asking yourself, why don't you just call up that MJ Melendez guy? And that's because he's not the answer to replace Valoria. He's basically another Valoria. He's got like a couple stats, and by a couple I mean he's got like contact versus righties, I think, and like maybe one other attribute that's like 1 or 2 points higher than Valoria, and the rest of them are either significantly lower or like the same. So he's basically another Valoria, and he's probably going to be traded eventually, probably at the deadline. Don't know for what, because I don't really know what we need at the deadline yet, but he's probably going to be traded at some point. Daniel Murphy, he's been solid for us to start the year. He's all I can ask for. He's doing all I can ask for, I should say. 798 OPS, 5 home runs. Solid start for the 37-year-old DH for us. Ryan Schimpf, he's doing his job. 6 home runs, 792 OPS. He's hitting for power. He is doing the darn thing. Pavin Smith, unlike Schimpf, refuses to hit for power. The guy just he's out there hitting for contact, he's getting on base, he's hitting much better than he was last year, 786 OPS, but he only has 1 home run and a 386 slugging. So really the guy only either walks or hits singles, which is not what you want to see from a first baseman. It's very odd because his ratings suggest that he should be hitting home runs, or at least hitting doubles, and he's just not. So I don't know what his deal is, but that's what Pavin Smith is up to so far in the season. Ryan O'Hearn is a guy we have down in AAA at first base who could eventually get time at that position, or in a corner outfielder because he can play some corner outfield as well. He got some time in the spring training for us. You might have recognized him in the spring training video. He's also gotten a prospect profile. He's been here since the start of this series, and he's gotten significantly better. I feel like he has some solid hitting ratings. He has a very solid discipline rating, and I like his ratings. I think he can perform very, very well at the Major League level. I just don't know where I could squeeze him in the lineup at some point. Nick Prado, similar issue. He's still in Double-A because he's behind O'Hearn. I think he's slightly behind O'Hearn as far as overall and how he could do at the Major League level. I feel like he probably could hit at the Major League level, but like I said, he's behind O'Hearn, and he is still only 23 years old because he was 19 when the series started, so he's still quite young. He has similar ratings to O'Hearn. He just won't walk nearly as much, which is why I think O'Hearn is a bit better. And Prado does have a much better fielding rating, so he's going to be able to play field much better than O'Hearn, and he can also play corner outfielder, so both him and O'Hearn can play first as well as left and right field. I think Prado only says he can play right, but I mean, let's be real here. I would just change it so he can play left as well, because if you can play right, you can play left, especially in MLB The Show. Vince Falvey is another guy who could possibly end up playing first base for us, and he can also play corner outfielder, and you guys know him as a DH, but we don't really need a DH right now because we have Daniel Murphy. And we all know Vince Falvey dominated in his first stint in the big leagues for us. I thought he was like our long-term solution at DH. He was going to be the key part of one of the key parts of our lineup for years to come. And then the next season, he just decided to be flat out awful. He shit the bed, did not do well at all. He finished the year in AAA. His ratings are still very good. His ratings suggest that he should be legitimately one of the best bats on our team, if not one of the best bats in the American League. And he just wasn't that last year, and he's in AAA right now. He probably will get a shot at some point again. I just don't know when that will be, what position it'll be, or where he'll play, and just all that stuff, but I would like to get him back in the Major League lineup at some point. Matt Duffy has a .763 OPS with 6 home runs. He's hitting home runs still. His OPS is pretty decent. He's just not getting on base as much as I would like, but small sample size, only 1 month of the season, so things are destined to change. Brett Phillips, same deal, slow start. Small sample size, things are going to change. And even if he is bad at the plate, he's always effective in the field, but he's not like Valoria. He's not going to be always awful on the plate. He's kind of streaky. I've noticed that he's in his hitting style. He'll have a month where he's just kind of just doing nothing, but he's always good in the field, and then he'll have another month where he just takes off, and he's like our best hitter that month, and then the next month will still be pretty good, and then I'll have another month that's a little bit shaky, and it's just kind of like that all year long. So, I mean, I'll take that in center field, especially for some Gold Glove defense. And then also, he still only has 4 years of service time, so he still has multiple years of team control. Same deal with Bonifacio, and that's another reason why we have a guy like Lear Hernandez stuck down in AAA. Lear Hernandez is a legit big league bat who is just stuck in the minor leagues behind guys like Bonifacio, Santana, Phillips, Khalil Lee. We also have a ton of prospects in the outfield that if we lose Hernandez, we're not going to really miss him because we have so many prospects that are highly touted in the outfield that we just don't particularly need Hernandez. And I would say that he's definitely going to be traded at some point. I would think that he would be the main piece in a trade for a catcher, because I mentioned that I'm going to be trading for a solid catcher. I would think he would be the main piece and maybe like another prospect to like sweeten the pot for a team. And he is also signed for the next 3 years under $1 million, and he is still eligible as a rookie because he doesn't even have a full year of service time. So Lear Hernandez, he's a pretty sweet deal for somebody out there who could give up a catcher for us, because Lear Hernandez is a very good bat for somebody out there. And he's not just a guy who can help them right now, he's a guy who can help them for multiple seasons down the line. DeAndre House is probably the best of the outfield prospects, in my opinion. He can play any of the outfield positions. He's fast. He's going to hit a ton. He has no pop whatsoever, but he's going to hit for a ton for contact. He's going to have a high average. He's going to get on base. He's going to slap the ball all over the field, hitting doubles, hitting triples, making plays in the outfield. The guy is a legitimate player, so hopefully we see him in the major leagues at some point as well. Larry Decker, he's still in AAA doing his thing, hitting home runs, being the younger version of Ryan Schimpf. He will most likely be our second baseman next season once Ryan Schimpf leaves. Schimpf getting up there in years, so the best thing to do is to get rid of Schimpf after the season and then just replace him with a younger version of himself, which is Larry Decker. Nick Lopez was up for a bit 2 seasons ago. He still has a big potential. He's still under 30 years old. He will definitely be traded at some point. I just don't know how much value he has and what I'm going to trade him for. So Nicky Lopez, he's not going to be around. Doesn't have a future here, but I just don't know what I'm going to trade him for at some point when I do trade him. Taking a look at some of the pitching on our team, Mark Leiter Jr., he's doing his thing where he's second in walks allowed. He has the best whip in the American League. He's got a 3.07 ERA and 29 1/3 innings pitched, which is pretty solid. But then you look at his FIP, and that tells a different story, which is a 5.11. So that is definitely something to keep an eye on. As always, in the April recaps, it is a small sample size. Things can change, but it is something to keep an eye on, like I said. Jake Arrieta, he's the opposite of Leiter Jr., where he has a high ERA, but he's got a pretty decent FIP. Rafael Montero has been our best reliever, essentially, because he's tied for second in the American League in strikeouts, and he also won April Pitcher of the Month in the American League. Josh Stauman is a guy who will not be coming up to join us in the big leagues this year because he suffered a head fracture. Yeesh. In the minor leagues, he will be out for the rest of the year. It's a 6+ months injury, so Josh Stauman, I'm assuming, got hit by a comebacker. Just not a good situation for him. He's on the 60-day DL all year long. And before we wrap up this video, we're going to take a look at the top prospects currently in this series. The top 5, number 1, Fernando Tatis Jr. from the Padres. They still haven't called them up because they're dumb. 2, Sixto Sanchez, starting pitcher for the Phillies. 3, Bruce Wilhelm, starting pitcher for the Mariners. 4, Hunter Green, starting pitcher for the Reds. He's a real guy. Joey Sobczak, I'm not sure exactly how he pronounced it. I believe that's a real guy because I don't think that's an actual name they have in the game. From the Twins, he's number 5. And then we have 3 guys on the list. At number 29 is Greg Howard. Just recently had a prospect profile. Number 38 is Henry Nunez, who will be getting a prospect profile at some point in this season. And then number 40, a guy who got a prospect profile last season in Gustavo Rodriguez. So that wraps things up here for April, here in this monthly recap. And we are going to be heading into the month of May of 2022. Our Royals sitting at second place, 1 game behind the Twins in the AL Central. And with that being said, that's going to wrap things up. I have been your host, Jerseyborn, and I'm saying goodbye.